Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Pierre, the Roto Chef, here to talk about some wide receivers that I like and don't for Week 11. Now, I'm not going to mention the obvious must starts. There's plenty of guys that you can set and forget. These are the ones that are kind of on that flex wide receiver 3 bubble. And so I'll tell you which ones I think you should put in lineups and which ones to fade. So let's start with a guy that I will be honest, I was completely fading the last couple of weeks. In fact, I had him in my trade article as a must sell, sell now while you can. But things have changed in Carolina if you hadn't noticed. So DJ Moore, through no fault of his own, has gone from being one of the top receivers in fantasy the first month of the season to somebody that has just kind of disappeared. So that kind of goes along with Sam Darnold, who for 3 games looked like what everybody expected and then turned back to Sam Darnold. So he's gone out for the season, and the worry was that PJ Walker, who has been really, really bad in relief as well in his time in Carolina, was going to be the starter, and now all of a sudden Cam Newton is back. So without going too deep into that, Cam Newton looked great in his limited snaps, very limited snaps, granted, in week 10, but we know what he can do. Last year, it's not like he was terrible. He put up some decent fantasy games, but he was able to find receivers and make guys like Jacoby Myers at least viable. Well, this is a better offense. This is definitely a better receiving core than New England had last year. And so Cam Newton, based on the fact that he is comfortable in his surroundings, in his offense, he's healthy, he's rested, and he's motivated, obviously. I think DJ Moore can go back to being DJ Moore. And no, I don't mean first 3 weeks of the season DJ Moore where he was lighting it up. I don't know where that came from or how that's going to happen again. But I think DJ Moore is someone who should be started, especially going against a weak secondary like Washington. Look, I know Washington pulled off the upset against Tampa Bay last week. That happens sometimes, right? For whatever reason, Taylor Heineke just owns Tom Brady. But besides that, Washington has still been one of the worst secondaries in terms of giving up fantasy points to wide receivers. Still give up a decent amount of points to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So I think Moore could have a nice game here. Not going to go so far as to say start Robbie Anderson. Let's wait and see on that one. But Moore, he at least is getting targeted. And even the last couple of weeks without Cam Newton at quarterback, he was still getting targeted, 7 targets each of the last 2 games. I think that number goes up, and I think Christian McCaffrey there should help the offense as a whole. So, DJ Moore, put him back in your lineup and don't sell if you didn't already. All right, another more for you. How about Elijah? Now, talk about quarterback issues, the Jets. We already know now that the Jets quarterback for week 11 is going to be Joe Flacco. It's not a joke. If you saw that on social media, it's actually true. The Jets are going to start Joe Flacco. You can't blame him for making a switch after Mike White proved to not be the savior, throwing 4 interceptions last week. Zach Wilson still not healed. At least that's what they're going with. So here we go. Joe Flacco at quarterback. Is that really any worse? I mean, think about Elijah Moore. He's been putting up pretty good numbers no matter who's at quarterback. He's caught a touchdown pass from Wilson. He caught one from Mike White. And so he's still able to be productive. This is a guy who knows how to get open. He's working a lot out of the slot, and he has that run after catch ability. I think he'll be just fine. And this matchup, I know the Dolphins have actually looked really good on defense the last 2 weeks, but here's the thing, their secondary is still vulnerable, and their top corner is Xavier Howard. Know about Xavier Howard. He's a stud. He's going to be playing on the outside. He's probably going to cover Corey Davis a whole lot. Not a shadow situation necessarily, but he's going to be all over him for the most part. I think Moore is the guy that Flacco's going to go to the most. And Moore has shown that he's kind of taken over for Jamison Crowder for the most part. So both guys are viable, but I like Moore's ability better at this point. I think a guy who, again, getting 6 targets per game the last 4 games, no matter who's at quarterback, no matter what the situation is, I think that Moore is a guy that I feel comfortable setting at my wide receiver 3 slot pretty much rest of the season. Devonta Smith, you can't always feel comfortable with him, even though he's clearly one of the most talented of the rookie receivers. But he's been very boom or bust. There's a lot of receivers who fit that bill. Definitely boomed last week, which is a good thing. What's he going to do this week against New Orleans? I think it's another boom week, and I'll tell you why. New Orleans has one of the top run defenses, arguably the best run defense based on statistics. I talked about this in my running back video. They are shutting down running backs less than 3 yards per carry. They've been doing that all year long. Well, if you think about it, this is a defense that's going to focus on the run. It's not quite a funnel defense. They're not that bad against the pass. They are giving up the 6th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers and the 5th most yards per target. That sounds like it's right in Devonta Smith's wheelhouse. He's a guy who makes those big plays, and of course we know he's going to get the targets because who else is Philly going to throw to, right? There's just not a lot of receivers who are going to get targeted, and also it doesn't hurt that Dallas Goedert is in the concussion protocol. There's a chance he doesn't play this week. That's one less target, probably the next most viable target for Philly. So I think we could see even bigger game from Devonta Smith. Now, again, there's always risk there because if he doesn't hit on one of those big ones downfield, doesn't get in the end zone, you're looking at a pretty mediocre outing potentially. He's not necessarily a target magnet per se, just because this offense isn't throwing the ball much anymore. But I think he's a very good chance to boom, and I think you have to have him in your lineup wherever possible. All right, couple guys to sit. This one might be shocking. Scary Terry, he's got a scary matchup this weekend. Now, talk about boom or bust. You wouldn't believe how boom or bust Terry McLaurin has been this year. Though if you have him on your roster, you probably do know this. He's been a top 5 fantasy wide receiver 3 times. One of the elite scorers on the week, 3 different times. But he's been outside the top 40 receivers 5 times. Okay, which means he really wasn't even startable, not even wide receiver 4, level. So it's all or nothing pretty much with him. There has not been an in-between. So what's going to happen against Carolina? Got to feel that it's a bust because Carolina, allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, they have held wide receiver groups. I'm not talking about a number 1 receiver or just an individual guy. An entire wide receiver core, the last 3 games, they've held that group to single-digit fantasy points. Stephon Gilmore, not coincidentally, joined the team about a month ago. And remember, they added CJ Henderson too. Those guys seem to be healthy and going to be playing again. This is a group that is now locking teams down. They haven't let an opponent score more than 20 points for the past 3 games. So I just think this is one of those games where Terry McLaurin is going to let you down. I'm really not feeling too good about Antonio Gibson either. I wouldn't go so far to say must sit because, well, it's running back. It's a lot thinner. But I think McLaurin, you can probably find a better option. So I'm going to have to fade him this week. And then Christian Kirk. Talk about boom bust. You never know what to expect. You think, well, if Kyler Murray returns this week, which we're still not sure about, but if he does, that would be a good thing for Kirk. Going against Seattle, that should be a good thing for Kirk, right? That's something that's going to help his ability to get more targets, right? Make more catches, make big plays down the field. Remember, Seattle was one of the worst secondaries in the league the first month of the season. Things have changed quickly for Seattle. They've actually been allowing fewer than 7 yards per target over the past month and only 17 fantasy points to wide receivers. So they all of a sudden have changed things around. They realized what their problem was. They've fixed it. This is a team that isn't giving up a lot of yards to wide receivers. And remember, Kyler Murray may be back. DeAndre Hopkins might be back too. That's not going to help Kirk, obviously. So the thing is, I just think the upside is limited here. Kirk is a guy who he always has a chance to make a big play, but I'm feeling that this is not a game where it's going to happen. So probably you do have a better option than Kirk as it stands. All those factors together to me mean Kirk is a guy that I'm going to sit. All right, that does it for week 11. That's my start sit wide receivers. If you like what you see, don't forget to hit subscribe and like on the way out. We definitely appreciate you. All right, thanks for watching.